Good speech.
Thank you. The Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr Speaker, it's my pleasure to take a call on this first reading on the intelligence and security legislation, and I particularly wanted to begin by endorsing the comments made by the Attorney-General in his opening remarks, and I too wanted to acknowledge and put on record and thank Sir Michael Cullen and Dame Patsy Reddy for what I think was an excellent piece of work, a very well-considered, well-balanced piece of work, and I think the fact that we are beginning this debate in this House with a broad level of political support really does reflect the quality of that report. And I do think it's important that for legislation as important as this, that we seek to achieve consensus wherever possible, and that New Zealand feels that it has a good chance to test through these issues, because they are important. I know there are some in New Zealand who would like to believe that we could live in a world where agencies like this, legislation like this isn't necessary, but actually the vast majority of New Zealanders understand and accept that this is a very real part of keeping our people and our country safe. But equally importantly, and perhaps even more importantly because of that, we have to have legislation that is very clear. There is no room for ambiguity or uncertainty as to how provisions apply. There needs to be absolute certainty around the scope of the powers, the authority that they convey and the oversight of them. And this legislation, in my mind, undoubtedly puts us on a better footing than we have previously had, as we've already had acknowledged by the Privacy Commissioner as just one commentator. The part I wanted to focus on, Mr Speaker, in my contribution is not the issue of surveillance, which is the one that obviously takes up a lot of the public interest, but actually on the critically important function of the GCSB around cybersecurity. And I think, sir, that in all of the talk around these agencies, this role really does get overlooked, and I think it's important that we reflect on it. And as a minister who has a very active role in policy around cybersecurity, I think it's appropriate that I talk to it. Mr Speaker, just by way of context, it is worth putting on record for the House the incredible size, complexity and damage of the cybersecurity issue in the cybercrime industry. Whether we are talking about state-sponsored cybersecurity attacks, whether we're talking about hacktivism, whether we're talking about actually what has become a vast army of entire criminal enterprises who provide entry to almost any computer system, who provide made-to-order stealing of information or duplication of identities. This is a sector that I think most New Zealanders don't quite appreciate the size of. Can I tell this House that cybercrime globally is now bigger than the global drugs trade? That's how big this is. We're talking about $600 billion a year in cybercrime, and, sir, it's growing increasingly quickly. Just by way of context in New Zealand, most members of the House, I'm sure, will be aware of the issue of ransomware, which is particularly pernicious, where cyber actors get in, lock up your information, and then will not de-encrypt it without a payment. Just in this year alone, from between the months of January to March, so just a very small period of time, we went from seeing ransomware being about 33% of all of the malware affecting New Zealand to being 93%. So the explosion in that area alone is huge. Just one of our telco providers told me that on average they're blocking 51 dedicated denial of service attacks every day. Every day. And some of those attacks, one of them in particular, was 20% the capacity of their entire network. So we're not talking about small, isolated attacks. I also have to tell this House how incredibly sophisticated these actors are. You know, if you think, oh, well, I'm all right, I've got a password. I was talking with a cybersecurity firm here in Wellington just this morning, actually, and we were talking to some of their pen testers, their penetration testers, who specialise in providing services for businesses to understand where their vulnerabilities are. They were telling me in all of the years that they've been operating across almost every type of business you can imagine, very large, very sophisticated businesses in New Zealand, there is not a single business that they haven't been able to get full access to their network when they've gone on and pen tested it. So if we think this is just sort of the people around the edges who've forgotten to password their systems, we're absolutely wrong. This is incredibly sophisticated, and it needs a very, very high calibre of dedicated, unbelievably clever people doing it. And, sir, most of those And most of that expertise resides within the GCSB. One of their great successes in recent times has been the development of Project Cortex, which involves a very clever shield effectively around our most important network in our critical institutions of national importance, whether they be core infrastructure, core financial, core government. And that has been very, very effective in the time it's been running, sir, in protecting those organisations against very, as I say, high calibre, sophisticated events. And the GCSB is also incredibly important in this space because cyber, of course, is global. We can't just sit in New Zealand and assume it's all within our own borders, and the GCSB's ability to work effectively with our international partners is fundamentally important to our ability to protect New Zealand from cybercrime. This is not imaginary, it's not some sci-fi movie, it's happening every day, it is accelerating at rates you wouldn't believe, and we've got to be in front of it. We can't say, well, we're at the bottom of the world, they're not going to target us. They can, they do, and it's the GCSB that is really very much at the forefront of understanding and responding to that very sophisticated attacks. Mr. Speaker, this bill is an important part of maintaining the GCSB's ability to carry out those cyber functions. It's not the only thing we're doing, of course. We have a wide-ranging cyber security strategy, which I released with the Prime Minister recently, which goes through a number of initiatives, includes standing up New Zealand's first CERT, which the GCSB will be a part of. But just as it's important in the roles of national security and surveillance, protection against terrorism and all of the things the public more commonly associates with our intelligence agencies, we have to have clear, transparent rules of operation for the GCSB in relation to cybersecurity. So I want to just touch on a couple of the aspects of the bill that are relevant in this regard. Mr. Speaker, the existing scope of the GCSB's information assurance and cybersecurity function is now going to be incorporated within the broader umbrella function of protective security, as the independent reviewers proposed, which also, of course, covers some of the SIS's functions, such as security clearance vetting. In Clause 15 of the bill, we still, though, set out the detail of that information assurance and cybersecurity function and preserve the existing scope. And consistent with the clear decision of the government, as outlined by the Attorney-General, that we must maintain a clear delineation between the agencies, the bill makes it very clear that only the GCSB is mandated to provide that cybersecurity service as part of the protective security function. The bill goes on to explicitly recognise that the GCSB can provide these cyber security and assurance functions with the consent of affected entities, as it does with Project Cortex. But it also makes clear, and I think this is important to get on record, that any information that the GCSB obtains in the course of carrying out its protective security functions and its cyber security functions in particular, if it needs to use that information for any other purpose, it would have to go back and get a warrant. This is not another way of getting information. Cybersecurity information is collected and used for cybersecurity purposes only, cannot be used for other functions, and if needed, would have to be sought under a warrant along the lines the attorney set out in the normal way. They are limited to the powers available to it in any warrant where that is required. It makes it clear in the bill that the GCSB retains their existing powers to access information infrastructure as required, and overall I think we can be confident that the bill ensures that the GCSB will be able to continue to provide those very effective, very necessary information assurance and cyber services. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, when you are looking at an area like cybersecurity, we cannot be left behind. We cannot, for one moment, have a regime that doesn't permit our agencies to continue to develop, work collaboratively internationally, and respond and keep pace with this pernicious, growing, highly talented, highly lucrative area of crime. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm confident that the bill will absolutely enhance and protect the ability of our agencies to keep New Zealand safe from cybersecurity. I too look forward to the debate at Select Committee. I think the bill is in a very good shape, as I say, thanks to the excellent work of the reviewers initially and then the collaborative work that's been led by the Attorney to get it to this point, and I look forward to its report back.
David Shearer.